Photo Voice Community Theory presentation by Courtney Robison for Social Work 505. In order to effectively practice within the macro-social environment, it's important for social workers to understand and appreciate the value of utilizing theoretical frameworks within community settings. Communities are defined by Kirsch, Ashman, and Hall as a number of people who have something in common with one another that connects them in some way, yet distinguishes them from others. A key feature of community is that participants share some mutual characteristic, which can be culture, activities, interest, or location. Communities can be geographic, or they can be based on common ideas. Social workers view communities as entities where citizens can organize or be organized in order to address mutual concerns and improve overall quality of life. Social workers must examine the community macro environment in which clients reside. Theoretical frameworks provide a means to view, analyze, and understand communities. To better understand the effects of environments in which clients live, such as the level of access to resources, and for the assessment of human behavior within the social community context, which is needed to propose solutions and practice that address larger issues affecting broad ranges of clients. Community theories can be applied to both geographical and non-geographical communities. Theories provide ways to examine things. Empowerment is defined by Kirsch, Ashman, and Hall as the enhancing of individuals, groups, families, and communities' power, ability, and control to determine their own destinies. This involves ensuring that others have the power, ability, and authority to achieve self-determination, that is, the ability to make their own choices. Kirsch, Ashman, and Hall outline the key concepts of empowerment theory as follows. Social justice is the broad philosophical perspective that all people have the right to enjoy equality with relation to economic, political, and social realms. The underlying theme of empowerment theory is that society is structured so that some groups are oppressed and denied their right to resources, free choice, and equal opportunity. Action groups can be formed to address these issues and advocate for political change. Consciousness raising is the process of enhancing people's awareness of themselves or others, or of issues in the social environment. People have either not thought of these issues before or have made superficial assumptions about them, without using critical thinking to evaluate the idea's validity or truth. People often tend to blame the oppressed group for that group's oppression, or blaming the victim. They think it's the group's own fault that they're subjected to social injustices, that they should have worked harder, that they are not intelligent enough to do better, that they are immoral, etc. The groups often fall into the trap of blaming themselves because they are members of an oppressed group and are influenced by the social environment and their perception of how the social environment views them. Consciousness raising helps people look at their personal predicament using facts and ideas which are brought to their attention as to why they and other members of their group are subject to social injustice. This helps them link issues such as poverty and racism to the social, political, and economic configurations or structures in which they live. It empowers people to view themselves more positively and realistically. They identify their strengths and see their capacities for action become stronger both personally and politically. It helps individuals and oppressed groups begin to see themselves as members of a community and eventually to fully participate in life of that community, to identify themselves as citizens, as political beings who, as such, have the right and responsibility to participate on the socio-political plane or scene, to be heard and to influence policies so that they can access the resources that they need. Mutual aid is the act of providing support, feedback, and using information within a group context. Empowerment stresses how group members can help and empower each other through mutual aid. Group members see themselves as a group of peers perceived as equals, striving and helping each other to gain control over their lives. They recognize they have the power and capacity to actively use the group to help themselves and each other. They use the bonds with other members and their own empathy to support differences as they seek to balance the needs of both the individual members as well as the group as a whole. Within mutual aid, there are 5 communication styles for potential, which affect the potential empowerment through the mutual aid process. Maypole is where the leader remains at the center of the group, controlling members and paying attention to everyone separately. Group interaction between members is discouraged. Round robin is where the leader maintains control, but each group member takes turns speaking. Hot seat is when the leader maintains control by directing all attention to one group member, the one in the hot seat, while other members watch. Agenda controlled is where the leader maintains strict order by using a structured form of running the meeting. And free form is where no leader emerges and group members feel free to contribute at will. Free form is the most empowering type of communication. It allows members to empower themselves and are free to support each other. The disadvantage is the lack of structure or order. Group members could get off track, which could interfere with the achievement of group goals. The possible resolution to this is having 2 members share the leadership role, which would prevent a domineering leader from emerging. Another option is to rotate the leader role among all group members. They can learn from others and model different leadership approaches, and this would allow the power to be distributed more equally. There's greater empowerment of each member, which would be the intended result, members becoming empowered through leadership while empowering others through mutual aid. Power is the ability to move people on a chosen course to produce an effect or achieve some goal. Potential power discrepancies exist within any group. Some may be more assertive, knowledgeable, skilled, or have higher statuses for various reasons. If a leader has been designated or emerges in a group, there's a natural power discrepancy that may work against mutual aid and empowerment. The next concept is multicultural socialization. This is the empowerment in any group, which also involves the understanding and socialization across various cultures. Group members and leaders should strive to identify, be sensitive to, and appreciate any differences that might exist among members, including such factors as ability, race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and age. For diversified groups to prosper, leaders must empower members' differences and recognize that there's multiple ways to achieve groups' goals. One must also consider socialization, which is the process by which a group or society conveys its knowledge, values, beliefs, and expectations to its members, as well as group cohesion, which is the extent to which group members feel that they belong in a group and desire to continue being members. It's important to note that the cohesion can be undermined by a group member or leader using obvious stereotyping based on characteristics supposedly associated with a specific group which the member belongs, or the use of false assumptions and stereotypes, which can hastily serve to turn off group members, which can disrupt the cohesion and empowerment of the group. There are 2 important components of empowerment theory that need to be recognized, and those are strengths and resiliency. Empowerment involves supporting the development of self-confidence, establishing control over one's life, working together to improve the quality of life, and gaining political power to enhance input and equality. Empowerment theories support these goals in community. Also within empowerment theory, there is the intermingling of the strengths perspective focused on community with the following assumptions. Each community has strengths. Community problems can be detrimental to the community well-being, but can also be sources of strength and opportunity for improvement and growth. One cannot assume they know the upper limits of the capacity of community growth and ability to repair itself. Strengths perspective focuses on what a community can do and takes aspirations seriously. Social workers are most effective when working together collaboratively with clients. We can work with community members to identify issues, develop plans, and achieve results. Every community has multiple resources. They must be identified and established. And it is critical to care about a community's overall well-being and provide community members with support and help. Utilizing an empowerment approach is a perspective on practice that includes how we think about social work as well as the actual steps we pursue in practice. It's critical to emphasize, develop, and nurture strengths and positive attributes in systems of all sizes to empower people. Empowerment enhances communities' sense of power and control over their destiny. Empowerment involves the improvement of positive sense of self-worth and confidence or competence, ability to influence the course of one's life, the capacity to work with others, to control aspects of public life, and the ability to access the mechanism of public decision making. In an article published by Mary Omer, she overviews the idea of organizational empowerment, which is defined as the organizational efforts that generate psychological empowerment among members and organizational effectiveness needed for goal achievement. Here, Stashman and Hall assert that empowerment in generalist practice involves critical thinking about how macro systems affect people. To what extent are people getting the resources and support they need from their communities and the organizations within those communities? One must also consider the importance of resiliency, which is the ability of a community to recover from adversity and resume functioning, even when suffering serious trouble, confusion, or hardship. Strengths perspective focuses on the positive attributes rather than the problems, and resiliency emphasizes the use of strengths to cope with adversity and survive despite difficulties. Resilience involves two dimensions, risk and protection. Risk involves the stressful life events or adverse environmental conditions that increase helplessness of systems. Protection concerns the factors that might protect against those vulnerabilities. Macro client systems include communities, organizations, and larger groups of clients with similar issues and problems. Social work seeks to empower clients and communities to prevent or change the problems they are experiencing, and this involves educating clients so that they understand their social environment, which helps them acquire the strength, skill, and power needed to create change. Social workers must consider empowerment in communities. This involves the purposeful and continuous process in communities where people possessing less or unequal resources gain greater access to communities' total overall resources. Mutual respect and cooperation should characterize this process. Social work seeks to empower client systems. Empowering does not mean simply handing power over to people, but rather helping people identify their potential, such as identifying courses of action, as well as making decisions about which options result in greater benefits, giving them more power over their own lives and futures. Kirsch and Hall identify that groups are particularly appropriate for empowerment as they can strive to change oppressive cognitive, behavioral, social, and political structures or conditions that adversely affect the control people have over their lives, that prevent them from accessing needed resources, and that keep them from participating in the life of their community. Empowerment can be applied to marginalized populations and is especially relevant to these populations because marginalization, by definition, according to Kirstashman and Hall, is the condition of having less power and being considered as less important in society than others, often due to membership in an oppressed group, such as being in a minority, racial, or ethnic population, or by being poor. One might argue that they are in the most need of empowerment. Empowerment can be applied to social issues faced by systems at all levels, micro, meso, and macro. These can include issues such as homelessness, poverty, disabilities, mental health, etc. within communities. People are complex and can belong to multiple overlapping diverse groups, otherwise known as intersectionality. Macro systems can develop policies and programs to enhance the well-being of various groups and populations at risk. Groups can be formed and services offered to address larger societal issues facing oppressed groups that benefit the individual group participants. The immediate goals of empowerment practice are to help clients achieve a sense of personal power and become more aware of connections between individual and community problems, developing helping skills, and working collaboratively towards social change. Empowerment occurs as the result of the combined strengths of individuals working to create change in the community. There are many ways and practices where empowerment is demonstrated. Boycotts as a mean of forcing change is a form of empowerment. This example was provided by Kirst Ashman and Hall when the concept was illustrated in an example where an Iowa politician used race as a factor to protest immigration. Providing social support is also an example of empowerment. Other examples of empowering practices involve providing resources such as support groups, linking to community resources, or assisting individuals with accessing information to better equip and support them in the role they are in. Educational workshops to teach skills needed to assist individuals to be able to increase their capacity and competency. Providing choices and assisting clients with evaluation of those choices is a demonstration of empowerment, as is the facilitation of groups to foster support, as these are seen as more empowering than one-on-one. Some of the underlying themes of empowering practices by social workers involve education, advocacy, and support. We can provide public education to our clients about issues facing their population and assist them in advocating for change. Empowerment practice can be demonstrated through legislative advocacy and lobbying. This is the action of influencing decisions and public policy. Other examples include involvement in political action organizations. Social workers can encourage marginalized populations to become politically active by encouraging, educating, modeling, supporting, and developing groups where members can be alerted and communicate with one another about issues which may be happening that they could get involved in that affect them. Social workers must consider the strengths of relationships to remain knowledgeable and up to date about policies affecting populations we work with, and to educate clients about those policies, and advocate for change in policies as well as educate clients how to self-advocate. Mary Omer completed a study involving neighborhood organization involvement, which demonstrated that engagement of community members to participate in neighborhood organizations addressing social issues led to a strengthening of residents' participation in democratic processes and advocacy, and thus increased their capacity for problem solving. Her study found that there was a relationship between group members' views of organizational processes and outcomes to their involvement in and perceived benefits from community organization participation. Empowering processes within organizations, such as shared responsibilities and roles, set the stage for members to enhance their skills and abilities, sense of control, competence, confidence, self-esteem, and well-being. Overall, Omer's study found that empowered organizations are those which are able to effectively engage their members and to create positive change. Individuals residing in rural environments often face challenges that others may not experience, such as sparse or limited resources for goods and services, such as transportation. Kirst Ashman and Hall provided an example of a program called the Rural Transportation Program in Nevada, which assists HIV-positive patients living in rural environments access to independent means of transportation to medical or social service appointments in urban areas by providing them with resources to pay for transportation-related purchases such as gas, food, and drinks. Marginalized and oppressed populations are arguably those that are most at risk and most in need of empowerment practices. Ashman and Hall provide examples of some populations at risk which benefit from use of the empowerment theory. Those include African Americans, Hispanic Latinos, LGBTQ+, women, older adults, and those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. African Americans often still face inequality and social justices today. Kirst Ashman and Hall gave the example of a program called Grandparents Raising Grandchildren in Massachusetts. This was a community response to African American grandparents raising their grandchildren at high rates due to drug abuse in many cases. Hispanics and Latinos are at a higher percentage, earning lower incomes and as well as high school diplomas compared to whites. There's also great income inequalities. There are higher rates of poverty related to undocumented status of immigrants or acculturation issues. As with any model, there are strengths and limitations to the empowerment theory, including the assumptions of strengths perspective. According to Weck, Rapp, Sullivan, and Kirchheit, some of the strengths include that it's a strengths-based way of thinking and is an alternative to the fixation with the negative facets of society, which aligns directly with the social work profession's values. An underlying purpose of all of the efforts of social work is to unleash the human power within individuals and promote personal fulfillment and social good. A couple of the values of social work that are explicitly present in the aforementioned purpose include respect for the worth and dignity of the person, and that individuals should have the opportunity to realize their potential as an individually fulfilled, socially contributive person. According to Dennis Saleeby, research on the effectiveness of strengths and empowerment-based approaches suggests an effectiveness in the utilization, and that in addition, they are an economical framework for practice. He quotes, related research on health realization, resilience-based practice, solution-focused therapy, community building, and the research done on the critical factors in successful therapy provides some associated support for the elements of a strengths perspective that make a difference. He further explains that utilizing empowerment and strengths-based language exploits the best attributes of a client system, promotes collaborating together to overcome trouble and adversity, confronts the misfortune with all available tools within and around one's social environment, and fights against anguish and cynicism, promoting collaboration in a forward-moving motion of together achieving possibilities, hopes, and dreams. It's pointed out in an article by Watson that while empowering and strengths-based approaches focus on positive attributes, it's important to note that they do not seek to outright ignore, disregard, or minimize the real adversities faced by individuals. Some may see an intentional and persistent focus on strengths to equate to a disregard of the struggles and pains of individuals, families, and communities, or to avert attention away from the realities of those who have experienced trauma, neglect, and abuse. And some see this as a false representation of what really is, or a glorified version of optimistic thinking, or for some, a denial of issues altogether. This perspective is criticized by some as being positive thinking in disguise, and that it's a means of reframing misery or ignoring reality. Saleeby defends the perspective as not being founded on the reiteration of inspirational mantras, nor is it an unrealistic idea of change of a positive nature taking place in minutes with a miracle. Rather, it's a way of looking at things as in order to build something of lasting implication with clients, social workers must make the most of clients' strengths, such as resources, talents, and motivation. Saleeby also defends the criticism that the perspective reframes misery by indicating that it does not ignore reality, but that it does require some reframing in order to establish and maintain an attitude and language which promotes the nature of opportunity and possibility.